Rivers are one of those pieces of terrain that always seem a little bit weird when they're sitting on top of the table. I came across this technique on Facebook about a year ago, and it's something I've been wanting to try out for a while. G'day everyone, Viv here. I hope you're all keeping well. Welcome back. This technique was something that I've been meaning to try for a long time. It's pretty simple, it's pretty straightforward. We're basically painting some plastic and covering up the edges with some terrain. Let's have a look. I bought two different types of plastics from Bunnings to just try them out. One was 0.3 of a millimeter, which is this thin crunchy stuff, and the other one was 0.9. Now this thin stuff sticks to itself so badly, it's like cling wrap. But after finding a suitable pair of scissors, it cuts really easily. This roll is over 4 feet long, so I can cover a 4-foot span with just one piece of plastic, which means my river's not going to have any gaps in it or any joins. From about a meter's length of this, you'll easily get 4 rivers. I've cut mine quite wide, but you could easily get 4 or 5 different types of rivers out of a single meter of this material. And as you can see, the purpose being to basically have, that piece of plastic that lays flat on the table, and then we build up the banks with whatever terrain we want to have against our river. I choose 3 different types of paint, and like a numpty, instead of reading the tutorial that was posted on Facebook, I just started painting. It was so hot in the studio on this day that the paint was drying super quick. I was hoping that I'd be able to blend the paint together, but this first test didn't really work out. I was just on the fly here. I figured out partway along the process that I'm going to get paint all over the desks, so I need to rush off and get some paper. While I'm doing that, the paint that's on the plastic is drying, and what I had hoped would happen didn't. In that, I'd have that darker brown in the middle, blending out nicely to the lighter brown on the outside. After letting this first piece dry and flipping it over, I really wasn't happy with the results, but I wanted to check to see how durable the paint would be on this plastic. So basically just scrunching it up was a pretty good test, and nothing moved. The paint didn't crack, it didn't rub, it didn't break off. I was pretty impressed. So it's time to get on with the second test. That first one really wasn't very suitable, so this time I thought I need to work a little bit faster, and to do that I need to be a little bit more prepared. So I laid down my paper, got some palettes out, got my paints ready, and went for it. This time I thought I'd start from the outside with my lighter colour and just work in small sections. While that section is still where I can blend in my darker colour towards the middle of the river. Also switched to using a sponge, which I think is a much better choice than trying to use a brush. And it looked pretty good. I gotta say, I was kind of happy. It's just that I didn't think the river was dark enough in the middle. I did like how there was some variation, like the river was flowing, like there was mud or dirt or stuff flowing down the river. It didn't look too bad. So to help make the river darker, I went and found like a really brownish, greyish colour, and went ahead on my third test. This one I wasn't happy with at all. As soon as I lifted up that corner, I could see that the paint hadn't blended together well, and there were what looked like oily streaks in the river. It just wasn't going to work, so on to the fourth one. This one again, I took my time and worked in small sections, really concentrating on blending my colors together, working from the darkest color on the inside out to the lightest color on the outside. And again, I was feeling pretty confident. By this stage, I'd gone off and read that article on Facebook, and they'd recommended that you cover the complete surface of the back of the plastic where you're painting with the darkest color and let that dry. When I came back, the plastic had curled over on itself. Now, I don't think that's a big problem, but time will tell. It certainly seems to be okay. It just needs to flatten back out again. This is certainly looking like the river that I wanted. Something that was dark and not dirty, but just dark. And it crunched up perfectly fine and unraveled perfectly fine. At this point, I'm pretty impressed. I haven't given the thicker material a shot, and I think the thicker material might help with the depth issue that I think I'm having with these river pieces. Is they just look a little bit like a piece of plastic. Being able to crunch them up like this, though, does help to give you a sense of movement in the water. It's not just a flat piece of plastic, but I think having something that's slightly thicker might make or help with that perception of depth. I'm really impressed with this method. I think there's certainly scope for experimenting with thicker pieces of plastic, and obviously I need to build a whole bunch of more terrain that I can use along the edges of the banks. The beautiful thing about that, though, is that all of that terrain can be used, in regular games. It just doesn't need to be part of the river. They're just terrain components that I can use in any game, and if I want to put a river on the table, then I've got all those pieces to line its banks. That worked really well. I was really impressed. I think using a thicker piece of plastic will help with the perception of depth to the water, but I love the versatility. I love the simplicity. I love the fact that I don't have river sections with obvious joins on the table. I like the fact that the banks that are used to form the banks of the river are terrain pieces that I can just use in a regular game. It's quite a interesting and I think, fun method for doing rivers. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your feedback. Have you tried this before? And if you have, jump onto the KOD community group. There's a link in the description and share some pictures with us. Show me what you've done, and I'd love to see that. Well, there we go. There's another random video that has nothing to do with laser cut MDF models, which is what Knights of Dice actually does. I'm sure we'll get to that at some point. Right now, I'm just loving being on a hobby kick. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you soon. See ya.